Hello everyone, and welcome to the Camera Basics presentation for Summer Camp 2022. So if we were in person, I would be asking you a question of the day. If you could be famous, what would you want to be famous for? And then if you could guess the phrase. The agenda for today is going to be talking about exposure triangles, camera buttons, camera shots, safety, and an activity. The objectives for this camp are: you will be able to safely set up a camera for use. You will think about the exposure triangle when using the cameras. You will be able to identify the shot scales, angles, and movements. Right now we're going to be talking about an exposure triangle. A DSLR takes light and turns it into an image. The way the light is measured is crucial to how the final image turns out. There are 3 sides to an exposure triangle, and those are ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. We're going to now be talking about ISO. The more sensitive the camera is to light, the more grainy the end result is. A low ISO would be around 100 to 200. This produces a clean image, but the image may be dark. An ISO this low would be used outside on a bright day. An ISO between 400 and 800 produces a clean image. This would be used when the frame is well lit. A high ISO would be anything over 1600. This image would become grainy. To stay away from having to use a high ISO, try filming where there is a lot of light. Here is just ISO broken down into more simplistic terms. We are now going to be moving on to shutter speed. A quick shutter speed produces a darker image because it lets light in for a shorter amount of time. It also catches a frame in a short amount of time, creating something called a freeze frame. A longer shutter is brighter, but if there is movement, the image will be blurry because it compiles all the light received while the shutter is open. When filming a video, try to keep the shutter speed around double the FPS. The industry standard is 24 FPS, so the shutter speed would be 1/50. This is done to prevent a choppy video. Here you will see the shutter speed broken down into more simplistic terms. We are now going to be moving on to aperture. Aperture is measured in f-stops. An f-stop is the ratio of the lens focal length divided by the diameter of the opening. This is why a smaller number is actually a bigger opening. A wider aperture lets in more light, so the image would be brighter. A smaller aperture lets in less light, so the image would be darker. When the aperture is wider, the depth of the field shortens, causing blurry backgrounds. If the aperture is small, the backgrounds are more clear. And here the aperture is broken down into more simplistic terms. So to recap, aperture is how much light is let in. This also changes the depth of field. For the shutter speed is how long light is let in. And for ISO is the sensitivity to light. So now we're going to be moving on to talking about manual focus versus autofocus. So we're first going to talk about why is manual focus, or MF, useful. MF allows the camera operator to control exactly what is in focus, and you can perform better than AF. All high-budget productions use MF for its reliability. Now we're going to be talking about why autofocus, or AF, is useful. First, if the camera or character is moving, autofocus can follow them easier. AF is quick to set up, and vloggers use AF all the time. Now we are going to be talking about taking photos or shooting videos. To take photos, the dial should be at M, so right here. And to take videos, the dial should be at the camera button, which is right here. So now we're going to be moving on to talking about the buttons on the camera on the top of the camera. Because we just looked at the dial here, so we're going to be talking about these buttons right here that are circled in red. The top one is called the shutter button, and this is the button to press when you need to take a picture or video. The next is the dial. The dial is used to cycle through the settings that you are going to change when using the camera. Next we have the flash. When the flash is active, the top bar will pop up and take a picture with the flash. Then, right next to the dial, you have the on-off button, and it's a standard on-off switch. Now we're going to be looking at the buttons at the front of the camera. First, we're going to be looking at ISO on a camera. To change the ISO, you will click the ISO button, so right here and right here. It shows it right here too. And then use the dial to pick what level you want. Auto ISO is fine, but using the manual choice of ISO is encouraged. Next, we have shutter speed and aperture. To change shutter speed, you can just use the dial at any time and it will change the shutter speed. You will see the numbers change when turning the dial. Now we have white balance. White balance is important. Each mode looks different and will say when to use it, inside, outside, shade. Next we have the viewfinder. You can look through this when you are taking pictures or shooting a video. Then down here you have the media library. If you click that button, you will be able to look at all of the videos and pictures you have taken in the past. Next, we're going to be moving on to camera shots, angles, and movements. When we talk about scales, it is how far or close the actor is to the camera. When we talk about movement, how is the shot moving? And then when we talk about angles, is what angle are we seeing of the world? So here are some camera shots. So we have the establishing shot, extreme wide, wide, medium wide. Some more camera shots. We have medium close-up, and extreme close-up. And then here are some camera movements. We have the dolly where the camera moves back and forth like this. We have the boom or jib, which that moves up and down. We have the truck, which moves side to side. And then we have the pan where it pans back and forth. We have the tilt where it tilts up and down. And then we have the roll. Here are some camera angles. We have the high angle, low angle, candid, and eye level. So now I'm going to be talking about how to use a tripod. I will talk about this more when we are in person, but for being virtual right now, I will go over it quickly. So the first step is you're going to open the tripod. You're going to take the tripod out of its case. Then you're going to extend the legs. So unclip the leg fasteners and extend the legs. The fasteners are these black clips right here. Then you're going to lock the legs. So lock the legs from moving. So you'll open them to extend them and you'll close them again to close them and lock them in place. Then you're going to want to attach the camera. Do this when the tripod is fully stable and you'll attach the tripod right up to the top right here. This is when you will do the minor adjustments. So make small adjustments to height, angle, etc. Now we're going to be talking about camera safety. Please always remember to wear your strap around your neck at all times unless the camera is fixed to a tripod. The second thing to be cautious about is be aware. Try not to trip or bump into anything when you have the camera in your hands or hanging around your neck with the safety strap. The third thing to be cautious about is when not in use, keep the camera in its bag and not just sitting out on a table or on the ground because that's when damage can happen to the camera. The fourth thing to be cautious about, when you take the lens cap off of your camera, please make sure to put the lens cap either in your pocket or on your desk, and do not touch the lens with your fingers because that'll make your camera shots blurry. So for the filming activity that you're going to be doing virtually, you are going to film 9 different videos incorporating the following. You're going to have shot scales, 3 of them, angles, you're also going to have 3 different angles, and you're going to have 3 different movements. Once this is complete, upload all of your videos to your Google Drive, then create a Google Doc that will host all of your shareable links to your 9 videos. Once that is complete, share the completed Google Doc with me. And this is what your final activity should look like that you are going to share with me. You are going to have 9 videos here with your shot skills, and you're going to have the links for each one, the angles with your 3 links, and your movements with your 3 links. And then when that is done, you can email them to me at slbauer2@wisc.edu.